No one notices. No one questions it. On board a cruise ship, surrounded by luxury, lights, endless buffets, and impressive shows, the most mundane act goes completely unnoticed. Flushing the toilet. A click, an almost instantaneous sucking sound, and silence. For the average passenger, that's the end of it. But what is about to be revealed is that this moment, this seemingly insignificant gesture sets in motion a complex system hidden beneath the feet of thousands of people, a system that never sleeps and could literally be the line between global health and biological disaster. Imagine a passenger walking calmly through the elegant corridors of the ship, unaware that just below them, hidden among pressurized pipes and airtight ducts, thousands of liters of human waste flow every hour. This is neither exaggeration nor drama. A modern cruise ship carries more people than some entire towns, and each of them uses the toilets several times a day. What many people don't know is that these systems don't work like traditional toilets. Here, there is no water tank or gravity acting slowly. Instead, a vacuum mechanism is activated that sucks with enough force to displace everything in fractions of a second, at speeds comparable to those of an airplane taking off. And what is most disturbing is that at that moment, what goes down that pipe no longer belongs to the passenger and enters an invisible world, completely controlled by high-level technology and strict secret protocols. This mechanism does not simply send the contents to a tank. In fact, the vacuum system is connected to smart sensors, automatic valves, and gates that open and close in a precise order. If something goes wrong, the result can be catastrophic. There are documented cases where a system error caused waste to travel through pipes in the opposite direction, flooding corridors and passenger rooms. Cruise ships never talk about these stories publicly, but official Coast Guard records tell a different story. When the system fails, everything stops. The ship goes into sanitary alert and may even be forced to divert to call for help. That's why when you flush the toilet, what you're actually activating is not a simple discharge, but the machinery that sustains the biological balance of a floating city. What's most impressive is that this system is so automated that it monitors the amount of waste generated by each section of the ship in real time. Operators can see flow, pressure, and fill level graphs on screens hidden from passengers. Every flush is recorded. Every suction is part of a database that is stored to comply with international laws. Because although many believe that everything goes into the sea, the reality is very different and much darker. And if you haven't already, subscribe now and leave your like, because in the next block you'll discover the hidden journey that follows what disappears in a second, and you'll never see a cruise ship in the same way again. When pulling the chain, passengers believe that the water simply disappears, as if by magic. But what they don't know is that at that moment, one of the cruise ship's most complex and secret systems is set in motion. A hidden network of pressurized pipes that sucks waste away at an impressive speed using vacuum, not gravity. The sound you hear is no coincidence. It is a sign that the contents are being drawn into the heart of the treatment system, located many levels below the cabins, in areas where no passenger is allowed to enter. This is where what engineers call the dark phase of the journey begins. This material, which can no longer be called water, is transported to huge collection tanks. These chambers are hermetically sealed and equipped with sensors that measure toxicity, pressure, and temperature levels. If something goes wrong, the entire cruise ship could face a health emergency. Some engineers have described this system as the ship's gut, a disturbing metaphor that reflects how essential this process is to keeping the ship alive. At that very moment, industrial pumps begin to separate solids from liquids using centrifugal force. What was once a murky liquid becomes layers: plastic waste, excrement, paper, grease, and contaminated water. Modern cruise ships are required by international law not to discharge anything into the ocean without rigorous treatment. However, what many passengers do not know is that before being purified, every liter goes through extreme processes: electrolysis, pressurized ozone, ultraviolet rays, and controlled bacteria that feed on human waste to break it down at the molecular level. During this hidden journey, organic waste begins to transform into a semi-solid mass that will later be dehydrated and compacted. What was once part of the human body ends up becoming a block of industrial sludge that will be stored until it reaches port. But the most shocking thing is not what is discarded, but what is reused. The water that seemed lost is about to come back to life, though never as it was before. Meanwhile, on the surface of the cruise ship, passengers continue their day enjoying the buffet, swimming in the pool, or sunbathing. None of them imagine that, a few feet below their feet, a profound transformation is taking place on a biological and technological scale. The cruise ship not only takes people to a tourist destination, it also carries a floating laboratory dedicated to converting human waste into reusable resources. And the most surprising thing is about to be revealed. Under the glow of the cruise ship's lights, while passengers enjoy the sunset over the sea, something few would believe possible is happening in the bowels of the ship. The dirty water that traveled through miles of pipes begins a transformation process worthy of science fiction. What was once human waste begins its purification in a sequence of chemical and biological phases so precise that if it were to stop for a moment, the entire internal ecosystem of the ship would collapse. The tour continues to the sewage treatment plant, a sealed enclosure filled with pipes, valves, filters, and ultraviolet lights that flash like in a movie laboratory. There, the contaminated water passes through mechanical filters where particles and solids are trapped. Then, through biological reactors where colonies of specific bacteria feed on the waste, breaking it down into harmless compounds. This entire process is digitally controlled from a control room where engineers monitor pH, turbidity, and pressure levels. Every number counts. One mistake could mean pollution leaking into the ocean, something that is strictly prohibited by international maritime law. In the next phase, the almost clean liquid passes through ozone and ultraviolet radiation chambers that eliminate any traces of dangerous microorganisms. What comes out of there no longer smells bad, no longer has color, and on some ships, it reaches such high levels of purity that it is reused for decorative plant irrigation systems or to clean the decks. The water has been reborn, but its journey is not yet over. What many people do not realize is that this process not only seeks to maintain hygiene, but also to protect the industry's reputation. In the past, cruise ships have been fined millions of dollars for dumping untreated waste into the sea. Since then, regulations have become strict and controls relentless. Today, the most modern ships have satellite-connected sensors that report the quality of the processed water to environmental authorities in real time. Every drop counts. Every discharge is recorded. Meanwhile, on the surface, the cruise ship looks like paradise. No one suspects that just below the deck where music plays and the smell of food floats in the air, an invisible battle against pollution is being waged. It is a silent reminder that even in the midst of luxury, science works tirelessly to sustain the illusion of perfection. And if you haven't already, subscribe and leave your like, because in the next block, we'll find out what happens to what can't be recycled, and where it ends up when the cruise ship arrives at port. As the cruise ship sails majestically across the ocean, part of the underground system continues to operate silently, dealing with an invisible enemy, waste that cannot be treated or recycled. Solid waste, compacted sludge, chemicals, oils, microplastics, everything that even the most resistant bacteria and state-of-the-art machines cannot break down. It is the dark side of the cycle, a destination that no one talks about but which is always present. Deep inside the ship, in compartments where the air smells of metal and ozone, so-called sludge blocks accumulate, blocks of dehydrated waste sealed in vacuum packs. They are the remains of everything that passengers forget, throw away, or discard without thinking. Each of these blocks represents hundreds of liters of concentrated waste, a tangible trace of life on board. But what most people don't know is that managing this waste requires protocols worthy of a space mission: controlled temperature, negative pressure, and constant monitoring to prevent leaks or toxic gases. Contrary to popular belief, cruise ships do not dump this waste into the sea. That would be an international crime. Instead, each ship has a discharge schedule approved by the maritime authorities of each country. When the cruise ship docks at an authorized port, specialized companies come on board to remove the hazardous waste and transport it to treatment plants on land. There, the materials are incinerated or chemically processed, some even transformed into energy. However, this part of the process is so costly and complex that many companies do everything possible to reduce the amount of waste generated on board. But here's the most disturbing part. Not all cruise ships comply with these rules. Throughout history, dozens of cases have been reported in which ships illegally dump their waste at night, far from the coast, taking advantage of the shadows and ocean currents. The traces of these discharges are almost impossible to detect. What today appears to be a clean ocean may be hiding tons of diluted waste kilometers below the surface. Engineers and sailors who work in the treatment area say that this job is not for everyone. It is a closed world, isolated from the rest of the crew. Some call it the ship's basement. Others, more superstitious, claim that time passes differently down there. There are no windows, no sound of the sea, only the constant hum of machines and the clanging of metal. Some swear that, after hours in that place, they begin to hear strange sounds that do not come from the pipes or engines. Some say they are simple vibrations. Others say they are the echoes of the sea reclaiming what once belonged to it. And while the passengers sleep peacefully in their cabins, dreaming of beaches and sunsets, the men and women in charge of waste treatment continue to monitor the constant flow of what everyone prefers not to imagine. Because even paradise needs to hide its dark side. Imagine it's dawn. The cruise ship is sailing in the middle of the ocean, the sky is clear, and most of the passengers are fast asleep. Everything seems calm, until, in the waste treatment plant, a red alarm starts flashing. At first, it's a faint, almost imperceptible beep, but within seconds it becomes a deafening roar. The machines stop, the valves lock up, the pressure in the tanks begins to rise as if something inside is trying to escape. And worst of all, the wastewater, that mixture that should be flowing in a controlled cycle, begins to flow back. This type of failure is extremely rare, but not impossible. All it takes is a power failure, human error, or system overload to trigger a chain reaction. The pipes, which normally suck waste into the treatment tanks, begin to work in reverse. The retained contents accumulate with no outlet, pushing the pressure to critical levels. On the upper decks, some passengers notice a strange smell coming from the bathrooms. Others begin to notice that the toilet does not respond when they press the button. No one imagines that what is happening beneath their feet could trigger a large-scale health emergency. In a matter of minutes, the entire cruise ship would be at risk of internal contamination. Engineers activate emergency protocols: automatic ventilation, closing of hatches, diversion of waste to auxiliary tanks. But there is a limit. If the system collapses completely, the ship would have to declare an environmental emergency and immediately head to the nearest port, interrupting the voyage. Millions of dollars in losses, bad international press, possible fines of millions more. And that is the least serious consequence. There is an even more alarming scenario. If the pressure exceeds certain levels, an internal leak could occur, not into the sea, but into the inhabited areas of the ship. The lower corridors, the crew areas, the isolated compartments. Everything that was carefully contained would spill out. What began as a routine act flushing the toilet would become a biological hazard. Historically, some cruise ships have experienced similar crises, although they are rarely mentioned to the public. Internal records speak of cruise ships that had to activate the Code Brown Protocol, a code that is only pronounced when waste reserves are on the verge of total overflow. During these events, passengers are not informed of the exact situation. They are asked to remain in their cabins for technical reasons while the team works frantically on containment. But the most disturbing thing is not what happens during the failure, but afterwards. Even if the damage is contained, the consequences for the crew working in the lower areas can be severe. Exposure to toxic gases, risk of disease, and, in some cases, temporary isolation. Because when contamination occurs inside a ship in the middle of the ocean, there is no way to evacuate. The only way forward is to contain, correct, and pray that the system will work again. And here's a question that few dare to ask. How close have we been to a health disaster at sea without even knowing it? How many times have you pressed that button without imagining that beneath your feet, the entire ship was maintaining the balance between order and chaos? After passing through a complex system of pipes, biological filters, and high-tech reactors, the water that comes out of the cruise ship's bathrooms does not disappear. It is transformed. Thanks to advanced scientific processes, 100% of the wastewater is treated to such high levels of purity that it can be returned to the ocean without causing any environmental damage. In fact, in many cases, the water discharged from the cruise ship is cleaner than that found on some of the world's coastlines. This process is regulated by international laws such as MARPOL, which requires that every discharge be monitored, recorded, and approved. It is not an option, it is a legal and environmental obligation. Some of this water is even reused within the cruise ship itself for cleaning and technical systems, turning these ships into small, self-sufficient cities in the middle of the sea. The most impressive thing is that this entire system operates 24 hours a day without passengers even noticing. Every time someone flushes the toilet, they activate a chain of scientific events that allow the cruise ship to operate safely, hygienically, and with respect for the ocean that sustains it. So the next time you're on a cruise ship and press the toilet button, remember that you're not just flushing water. You're activating one of the most advanced technological systems in the maritime world. If this discovery surprised you, subscribe and leave your like, because what comes next will reveal how a ship can generate its own energy in the middle of the ocean, and what would happen if that system failed.